and there are many logical reasons and methods for how Kurapika would have grown stronger throughout this time frame. Hey, what's up everybody? It's LeeLos, and today we're talking about why Kurapika versus the Royal Guard is obvious. Stay steady in pursuit of your dreams and goals. You're born to win, you're made for greatness, and I definitely believe in you guys. Keep up the great work each and every day. So Kurapika versus the Royal Guard is a battle between one of the smartest characters in the entire series versus three of the strongest characters in the entire series. Today we're going to analyze every single power-up and ability these characters have displayed to find out overall who's more likely to win between these characters. First off, let's talk about Kurapika and scale how powerful he is in the current chapters. Kurapika was already very powerful even in the Yorknew City arc, the most common misconception being that Kurapika's powers are 100% exclusive to when he's fighting the Phantom Troop members. However, his only ability that's 100% confirmed to be exclusive to fighting the Phantom Troop is Chain Jail. Kurapika has a list of other abilities that can be used on non-spiders, and these abilities are extremely powerful. Kurapika's Steel Chain allows him to steal the Hatsu abilities from other people and then use the Hatsu ability for himself. He also drains his opponent's aura in the process and essentially forces them into a state of Zetsu. His Judgment Chain is an insanely powerful one-shot ability that he can use on anybody as long as his eyes are scarlet, and it's stated in the Yorknew City arc that he's already trained himself to turn his eyes scarlet at will. If he hits an opponent with Judgment Chain, they have to follow whatever rule that Kurapika sets, otherwise Kurapika's ability kills them immediately. His Healing Chain is so powerful that after blocking a 100% Big Bang impact from Uvagen, he was able to instantly heal his broken arm. Using his ability Emperor Time Absolute Mastery, when his eyes become scarlet, Kurapika gains 100% proficiency in all Nen categories. This gave him the strength to perform insane strength feats when fighting Uvagen. Kurapika was shown speed blitzing and slapping Uvagen around, even when Uvagen was at 50% power. After Yorknew City, Kurapika spends more than a year straight doing absolutely nothing other than hunting down the Scarlet Eyes. The next time we see Kurapika, he's changed considerably, and has grown so much in his career as a hunter that he's actually hired his Nen Master and Gon and Killua's Nen Master as employees during the recent chapters of Hunter x Hunter. The lowest you can lowball Kurapika is to assume that he's gotten no stronger at all from Yorknew City until now, even after more than a year of doing missions. Even using this lowball, Kurapika would still be extremely powerful. In terms of physical stats, there's different arguments you can make for what percentage of Uvagen Kurapika scales to, based on our understanding of Nen combat from Bisky. If your Nen output is equal to or less than that of your opponent, then you cannot significantly damage them with Nen attacks. Seeing how Kurapika was able to block a 20% Uvagen punch and take 0 real damage from it, then proceeded to speed blitz 50% Uvagen immediately after this implies that at bare minimum, Kurapika is equal to 20% Uvagen. It's very debatable if he's actually physically stronger than 50% Uvagen. He was speed blitzing him, which implies that he's faster. However, you could make the argument that Kurapika's attacks were more annoying to 50% Uvagen than they were damaging, so it's debatable on whether or not he's actually on par with 50% Uvagen in terms of raw strength, even though he has greater speed than 50% Uvagen, but it is shown that his overall stats are bare minimum equal to, if not slightly greater than 20% Uvagen. So a safe lowball interpretation for Kurapika's overall stats is to say that he's somewhere in between 20% Uvagen and 50% Uvagen in terms of raw strength and defense, but it should be noted there's a real possibility that the chain Kurapika uses for melee attacks might scale above his physical punches. This is implied throughout the fight with Uvagen and Kurapika, where the entire battle, Uvagen never once tries to block Kurapika's chains. Every time Kurapika attacks with the chains, Uvagen attempts to dodge them. Uvagen also states that Kurapika's chains are infused with an improbable amount of Nen, seeing how he goes out of his way to dodge every attack that Kurapika throws with his chain, but he's able to withstand numerous punches from Kurapika. There's a real argument that Kurapika's chain that he uses for melee attacks might scale above his actual punches. Then he would have all of his hacks abilities on top of that, such as the Steel Chain and the Judgment Chain. The medium ball interpretation for Kurapika would be to say that Kurapika's gotten stronger over the 1 year plus time after the Yorknew City arc to the current chapters, and there are many logical reasons and methods for how Kurapika would have grown stronger throughout this time frame. For one, grown, you can make the argument that Kurapika's grown stronger through pure battle experience alone. It's shown to us many times throughout the series that Gon and Killua actually get stronger mid-battle, such as in their fight against Beanault, where they sparred Beanault for 10 days, and each became strong enough to defeat Beanault 1v1. Meanwhile, at the start of the fight, Beanault was stronger than both of them working together. That alone is an insane amount of progress in a very short time from nothing more than battle experience. Another example being Gon versus Knuckle, in which at the start of the fight, Gon was actually getting speed blitzed by Knuckle, but by the end of the battle, not only does Gon improve using his Hatsu ability, but he's also adjusting to Knuckle's speed and is able to fight Knuckle for about 20 minutes. Gon's improvement is further shown in their next battle, in which he fights Knuckle, who's stated to be going all out from the very beginning, and he's actually able to win some punch exchanges against him. Meanwhile, he was literally getting speed blitzed just a day before. Now, you could make the argument that this is just because Gon and Killua are super genius characters, but we also see characters like Shoot get stronger mid-battle as well. The narrator states that Shoot actually developed his ultimate technique during his fight against Youpi in the Chimera Ant arc. There's multiple statements throughout the manga in which we're told that battle experience is needed for characters to grow as hunters. Another method for Kurapika growing stronger is through improving his Hatsu abilities. This is shown to us throughout the manga as well. Gon asks, when will his Hatsu ability be perfected? And Bisky states, it won't be for years. Perfecting it is a lifelong process. This implies that hunters can continue developing and improving their Hatsu ability for a very long time. Gon and Killua's Hatsu abilities are continually developing and improving throughout the arcs. Killua, for example, at the start of the Greed Island arc, said that he could barely even use his electricity in combat, but by the end of the Chimera Ant arc, he has the Lightning Palm ability, the Lightning Bolt ability, and Godspeed. This same concept, in theory, should apply to Kurapika too, meaning there's a real possibility that his Hatsu abilities are even stronger now than they were during the Yorknew City arc. Kurapika's Hatsu abilities simply started out strong, but that doesn't mean that's the limitation of how strong they can become, and in theory, he should be able to continue improving his Hatsu ability as well. We also get dialogue from the narrator about Pito saying the same thing applies to Pito. Through using Dr. Blythe was actually improving. One more valid method is the simple fact that aura output and aura capacity both increase with training and time. So you could simply make the argument that over the year plus worth of time in between the Yorknew City arc and the current chapters, simply through training, Kurapika's aura output and aura capacity would have become greater. For the medium ball interpretation, if we say that Kurapika has grown twice as powerful during this 1 year plus time frame, which in complete fairness, considering that characters like Gon might have grown twice as powerful in just 10 days of fighting Beanault, this estimation for Kurapika might be closer to the low ball category. This would now make Kurapika relative to a 50% Uvagen in raw physical stats, such as strength and defense, and then he would debatably be some unquantifiable amount stronger than this when using his chain for melee attacks. He would still be faster than 50% Uvagen, and he would have all of his hacks abilities on top of that. Now, the high ball interpretation for Kurapika, you simply state that Kurapika performed all of his feats against Uvagen while just using basic 10. Then he goes on to learn Ken during the 1+ year time frame and becomes magnitudes more powerful. We see the difference in overall stats between 10 and Ken. Without using Ken, Gon would get one punched by Knuckle, but using Ken, he was able to fight Knuckle for 20 minutes straight. It is a considerable increase to your stats in Hunter x Hunter just using Ken alone. Furthermore, you could say that he learned Ko during this time frame as well. Adding these two concepts on top of the other methods of getting stronger, you start ending up with Kurapika being insanely strong. For a safe highball estimation, we could say that this would make him relative to a full power Uvagen in overall stats. Now, all that being said, how does Kurapika compare to the Royal Guard? So first off, Kurapika doesn't stand a chance against all three of the Royal Guard at once. They're simply too powerful, and it's just not within Kurapika's current abilities, even using the highball interpretation of Kurapika. The most interesting matchups are actually just 1v1 fights between Kurapika fighting Pouf or Kurapika fighting Youpi. In complete honesty, against Pito, Kurapika doesn't really have any notable win conditions. Pito is just simply too powerful. Pito is the oldest sibling and implied to be the strongest of the Royal Guard. Even before learning Hatsu, Pito was so powerful that Killua thought that Netero, Morel, and Nove would still lose to Pito. Then Pito goes on to develop multiple different Hatsu abilities and becomes considerably more powerful than this. Pito has statements of having N that extends 2,000 meters in one direction, did that for days, didn't even get tired. Pito's insane. It's simply too much power for Kurapika to be able to handle. In complete honesty, Pito, even without Hatsu, is very likely destroying Kurapika in a very similar manner to how Pito defeated Kite, and then you add all the Hatsu abilities and the improvements that Pito made during the Chimera Ant arc on top of that, it's simply way too much for Kurapika to handle. But now the most interesting matchups are between Kurapika 1v1 versus either Pouf or Youpi. When it comes to Nen combat, Youpi is canonically considered the least intelligent of the Royal Guard. This is why he was continuously fooled by the Palace Hunters. Considering that Kurapika has a large number of hacks abilities and he is magnitudes more intelligent than Youpi, this creates some interesting possibilities in a matchup between these two characters. For example, if Kurapika gets up close and tries to challenge Youpi to a straight up fist fight, then Kurapika is getting obliterated. However, the Steel Chain and the Judgment Chain creates an argument for Kurapika potentially having a possible win condition against Youpi. If Kurapika can use Een and turn his Steel Chain ability invisible the same way that he turned Chain Jail invisible, then drains Youpi's aura while dodging Youpi's attacks at the same time, he has a chance of not only putting Youpi into Zetsu, but gaining the ability Aura Explosion, or maybe even Youpi's Aura Cannon, and then blasting Youpi with it. This is a possible win condition for Kurapika, but there are many ways that this plan could go wrong. For example, we don't really know the details on what happens if Youpi interrupts the chain while Kurapika's in the middle of draining Youpi's aura. For example, let's say that Kurapika's draining Youpi's aura using the Steel Chain. If Youpi notices this and then knocks the Steel Chain off of him, what happens then? We don't really know what would happen in that situation. Would all of the stolen aura just return to Youpi, and then Kurapika, if he uses Steel Chain again, would have to start over from the beginning? Or does Kurapika keep the stolen aura, and then if he used Steel Chain again, it would just continue from where he left off? If it's the first option, then Kurapika pretty much has no chance of victory. If it's the second option, then Kurapika has a genuine chance. He would simply have to survive long enough to drain all of Youpi's aura. Even if it takes multiple tries, he has a chance of actually achieving this goal. We saw that Knuckle was able to avoid Youpi's attacks for a considerable amount of time, so Kurapika might be capable of a similar feat. The unknowns in this battle would be the maximum length of the Steel Chain. Could Youpi even feel the Steel Chain if he's being hit by it, and Kurapika makes it invisible using Een? And exactly how long would it take for Kurapika to absorb all of Youpi's aura using the Steel Chain? From the times we've seen Kurapika use the Steel Chain in the manga, it's been more depicted as a medium range attack. However, you could make the argument that maybe Kurapika could continue to extend the Steel Chain to be around the same length as the melee chain that Kurapika was using against Uvogin. If that's the case, then Kurapika's odds of victory increase considerably, because then, essentially, he can fight very similar to how Knuckle fought Youpi, just run away from Youpi until all of Youpi's aura is drained. It should also be noted that every time Kurapika uses the Steel Chain, he absorbs all of his opponent's aura almost instantly. Against a bodyguard, he stole all of their aura so fast that as soon as the fight started, the bodyguard could not use his Hatsu ability. In general, it appears to put people into Zetsu at a much faster rate than Knuckles' ability did. Also, the bodyguard didn't even notice that his Nen was being drained until he tried to use his Hatsu ability. It's a very interesting power. So all this being said, the reality is, if Kurapika can use an invisible Steel Chain on Youpi from a long distance, then he actually has a realistic chance at defeating Youpi in a 1v1. He would simply have to run away from Youpi until Youpi goes into Zetsu, and then just blast Youpi with an Aura Cannon, or the Aura Explosion ability. If he can't use the chain long distance, and it's a medium range attack only, then the odds of winning are pretty low. Because for Kurapika, he has to do everything perfectly, and he might not be able to dodge Youpi medium range for very long at all. Fighting Youpi medium range in a similar fashion to how Shoot did is insane, and Kurapika really hasn't displayed the ability to move like that at a medium range distance. Even Shoot, with his ultimate technique, could only fight Youpi for a single minute before Youpi crushed him. So the odds of Kurapika winning against Youpi using Steel Chain at a medium or close range distance, it's almost guaranteed Kurapika's going to lose there. Also, there's a few other factors to consider. Is there actually a limit to how much aura the Steel Chain can absorb? For example, what if Youpi has too much aura and Kurapika uses the Steel Chain on him, Youpi doesn't notice it, but Kurapika genuinely cannot absorb all of the aura? That would make it so Steel Chain just doesn't really work. Now, there's one other option for Kurapika potentially defeating Youpi, and that would be through the use of Judgment Chain. Youpi is made out of magical beasts instead of humans, so we don't really know if Judgment Chain would even work work on him, Youpi might have multiple hearts for all we know, and due to his ability to shapeshift, Youpi might actually be able to free himself from Judgment Chain. One more debatable thing about Judgment Chain, some fans believe that it negates durability and it can hit anybody, but if it does not negate durability, then he might not even be able to pierce Youpi's skin with Judgment Chain while Youpi still has his aura defense up. Overall, essentially, numerous things have to go right for Kurapika to even have a chance at winning. Meanwhile, Youpi just needs to land a few attacks on Kurapika in order to win the battle. It's simply more likely that Youpi would win against Kurapika, but it should be noted that Kurapika does have a couple possible real win conditions against Youpi. It's just simply more likely that Youpi would win. Now, with Kurapika versus Pouf, it would be less likely to win against Pouf than it would be against Youpi. Pouf himself is also very intelligent, and his Hatsu ability is extremely powerful. Pouf with his Hatsu ability can create numerous clones of himself. The clones are, for the most part, shown to be invincible against physical attacks, but the weakness to this Hatsu ability is that when he's making multiple clones of himself, the original Pouf has to stay at the size of a bumblebee, and Pouf has the ability to hypnotize people using his scales. So if Kurapika's not told about that ability, he might just get hypnotized while fighting the clones. Overall, it's not very likely at all that Kurapika would be able to beat Pouf. His only chance is seeing through Pouf's ability and aiming for the main body of Pouf while he's being attacked by the clones. It's very likely that Kurapika would lose. The reason this matchup is interesting is because Pouf said that if Morel had sacrificed his teammates, then Morel actually probably would have defeated Pouf. He was sending out his clones through the Smoky Jail, but Pouf himself was trapped inside Smoky Jail with Morel stuck in his bumblebee form, and if Morel had just waited it out, Pouf would have actually lost to him. If Kurapika can some way, somehow, figure out which Pouf is the main body and attack that one while avoiding all the other clones, then Kurapika could win, but the odds of Kurapika doing that is just very low. The rest of the clones are just going to jump him and beat him. So everything being said, Kurapika has almost no chance of victory against Pito. He has a very low chance of victory against Pouf, and he has his best chance of victory against Youpi, where it's more likely that Youpi would win, but Kurapika has actual real win conditions against Youpi. Against Pouf, Kurapika has to fight so perfectly that it's almost bordering on him just being lucky, and against Youpi, he also has to do everything perfectly, but he would have a much greater chance than he would against Pouf. All that being said, it still leans more towards Youpi being more likely to win against Kurapika. That's everything I wanted to say. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the views in the comments. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.